My name is Mildred, and I am 82 years old. I have lived a life rich in both fortune and love, but I have learned that the two are rarely intertwined, and that one is infinitely more valuable than the other. My late husband, Richard, was a brilliant and shrewd investor, and together, we built a small empire from discipline and foresight. He left me a fortune that could sustain 10 families for 100 years, but more importantly, he left me with a legacy of principle. Character, he used to say, is the only currency that can't be counterfeited. I am the matriarch of a sprawling family, a tribe of children and grandchildren who have, for the most part, lived comfortable lives in the shade of the financial tree Richard and I planted. And of all the branches on that family tree, my favorite, the one I believed was destined to grow tallest and strongest, was my granddaughter, Jessica. From the day she was born, she was my light. I saw in her a spark of my own spirit, a bright, inquisitive mind that I was determined to nurture. While my other grandchildren were content with the comforts my wealth provided, Jessica seemed to possess a deeper curiosity, a soul that I thought was immune to the shallow allure of mere things. I cultivated our bond as I would my prize-winning orchids, with patience, attention, and unconditional love. I was there for her first steps, her first heartbreak, and her college graduation. I funded her education, not as a transaction, but as an investment in a human being I believed in. When she spoke of her dreams to travel, I sent her to Europe. When she wanted to start a small online boutique, I was her first and most generous investor. My will, a document my lawyer reviewed with me annually, reflected this special bond. While my other grandchildren were well taken care of, Jessica was to be the primary heir to the fortune, the steward of a multi-million-dollar trust fund designed to give her a life of limitless opportunity. I did not see it as giving her money. I saw it as giving her freedom, the ultimate expression of my love. I believed she understood the difference. I believed she cherished the love more than the freedom it could buy. The past tense, I've discovered, is the saddest part of the English language. The first time Jessica brought Todd home for a family dinner, I felt a small, almost imperceptible tremor of unease. He was handsome, of course, with a practiced charm that seemed to have been assembled from the best parts of various romantic comedy leads. He was effusive in his praise of my home, my cooking, my family, but his eyes were constantly moving, cataloging, assessing. They were the eyes of an auctioneer, not a lover. He looked at my granddaughter, but I felt he was seeing a beautifully framed asset. Jessica, however, was utterly besotted. She hung on his every word, her own bright personality dimming slightly in the glare of his. In the months that followed, I watched as she began to change, her edges sanded down to fit more smoothly into the life he envisioned for them. Her passion for her small business faded, replaced by a new, all-consuming interest in yacht clubs and resort wear. The books we used to discuss were replaced by breathless talk of brand names and luxury cars. She was becoming a reflection of him, and the reflection was shallow, brittle, and cold. I tried to voice my concerns gently, but she was defensive. "You just don't know him, Nana," she'd say, a new, hard edge to her voice. "He loves me for me." I held my tongue, praying it was just a phase, clinging to the foolish hope of a grandmother who could not bear to see the flaws in her favorite gem. The evening of the betrayal was a Sunday, a night that had for 25 years been reserved for family dinner. The table was set with my best china, the air filled with the comforting aroma of roast chicken. Todd was louder and more confident than usual, emboldened by the recent announcement of their engagement. He held court at my table, telling loud stories of his business deals, his golf game, his impeccable taste. I sat at the head of the table, listening, my hearing aids turned down to a comfortable low hum. And that, I believe, was his fatal miscalculation. He and Jessica were sitting across from my son, and in a slight lull in the conversation, Todd leaned in towards Jessica, a conspiratorial, mocking smirk on his face. He spoke in a low voice, a stage whisper he clearly thought was beneath the notice of the deaf, old woman at the end of the table. "You have to hand it to her," he murmured, gesturing vaguely towards me with his wine glass. "She's held on for a while, it's almost impressive." Jessica gave a nervous little laugh, a sound that was a pale, twisted echo of the joyous giggle I remembered from her childhood. Todd, emboldened, continued, "Just have to keep being nice to the old money bag until she kicks the bucket. Then it's our time." My blood ran cold. The clatter of forks and knives around me faded into a dull roar in my ears. But the true horror, the blow that shattered my heart into a million irreparable pieces, came next. "Don't be awful," Jessica whispered back, but there was no heat in it, no defense. There was only a shared, secret amusement. Try not to look so bored, Todd chuckled. Just think of the Mediterranean cruise we're going to take the second we get our hands on that inheritance. And Jessica, my Jessica, the light of my life, the girl I had raised as my own, looked at the man who had just wished for my death, and she smiled. She didn't say a word. Her silence was her signature on their vile contract. In that moment, the love I had for her, the great, unconditional love of a lifetime, died. I do not remember the rest of the dinner. I must have smiled and nodded and passed the potatoes, my body performing the familiar rituals of a hostess while my soul was in a state of catastrophic shock. All I could see was Jessica's smile. It was a ghost that would haunt me for the rest of my days. When the last of the family had finally left, I stood alone in my grand, silent dining room, the remnants of the feast a mocking testament to the famine in my heart. The betrayal was not Todd's. He was a simple, vulgar parasite, too stupid to even hide his own nature. The betrayal, the true, unforgivable sin, was Jessica's. She, who had been the recipient of a lifetime of my devotion, had stood by silently and watched that devotion be mocked and spat upon. She had valued a hypothetical cruise with a monster over the living, breathing grandmother who adored her. The grief was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. But as the hours of that long, dark night ticked by, the grief began to cool, to harden, to transmute into something else. It became a cold, clear, and unshakable resolve. Richard's words echoed in my mind. Character is the only currency that can't be counterfeited. Jessica had proven her own currency to be utterly worthless. She had made her choice. Now I would make mine. I walked into my late husband's study, sat down at his old oak desk, and made a single phone call. "Arthur," I said when my lawyer answered. "It's Mildred. We need to make a change to my will, a significant one. Please meet me in your office tomorrow morning." Arthur Vance, my lawyer for over 40 years, was a man who had seen every conceivable permutation of human greed and family dysfunction. But when I laid out my new terms for him the next morning, even he was taken aback. He listened patiently as I recounted the conversation from the dinner table, my voice never wavering, my emotions locked away behind a wall of cold, hard resolve. "Mildred, are you absolutely certain?" he asked gently when I had finished. "To disinherit her completely, this is a decision that cannot be undone." "The betrayal was a decision that cannot be undone, Arthur," I replied, my voice flat. "I am not acting out of anger. I am acting out of principle. My fortune was built on hard work and character. It will not be handed over to a person who possesses neither." I dictated the new terms of the will. It was a masterpiece of righteous indignation, a final lesson from a teacher who had been pushed too far. I instructed Arthur to transcribe the conversation I had overheard, verbatim, into the preamble of the document itself, so that there would be no question, for posterity, as to the reason for my decision. I then bequeathed my entire fortune, every stock, every property, every last dollar, to a single entity, the local animal shelter, a small, struggling organization I had long admired for its tireless compassion. And then we came to the matter of Jessica. For her, I dictated a special, singular bequest. I instructed that a single, crisp $1 bill be placed in a sealed envelope. Along with the bill, a small, handwritten note was to be enclosed. I had already written it out the night before. It was short, and its every word was a testament to my shattered heart. The final piece of my plan was, perhaps, the most brutal. It was not enough to simply disinherit Jessica. The parasite attached to her, Todd and his family, who I had no doubt were eagerly awaiting their son's marriage into a fortune, needed to understand the new reality. "Arthur," I said, a new, icy calm settling over me, "I want you to prepare a legally notarized document. It should contain only the relevant pages of the new will, the preamble detailing Mr. Todd's comments, and the section detailing my bequest to the animal shelter, making it clear where the entirety of the estate is now directed." "And what shall I do with this document, Mildred?" he asked, his pen poised. "You will send it via registered mail to Mr. and Mrs. Todd Flanagan, Sr., I said, giving him the address to their stately home in the suburbs. "I believe it is only proper that they be made aware of their sons' financial prospects, or lack thereof. Let them K. Now that the old money bag is now officially and irrevocably closed for business." There was a long silence as Arthur finished his notes. He looked at me, not with pity, but with a kind of grim, profound respect. He had known my husband well. He knew that Richard would have approved. My work was done. The mechanism of my revenge, or what I preferred to call my final lesson in character, had been set in motion. All that was left was to wait for the inevitable, quiet implosion of my granddaughter's gilded, empty world. In the weeks that followed, I went about my life with a strange sense of detachment. The profound, aching love I had felt for Jessica was gone, leaving behind a hollow, scar-tissued void. She called a few times, her voice bright and oblivious, chattering on about wedding plans and venue deposits. I was polite, distant, my responses brief. I was a stranger to her now, a ghost she had not yet realized was gone. I spent a few afternoons at the animal shelter, a place of joyful, chaotic barking and quiet, rumbling purrs. I watched the volunteers work, their compassion a soothing balm on my wounded spirit. I spoke with the director about their plans for a new veterinary clinic, a project they had only ever dreamed of. I told her that a significant donation might be coming their way soon. I saw in the grateful, tearful eyes of this stranger the respect and appreciation that had been absent in the eyes of my own beloved granddaughter. This, I knew, was the right decision. My fortune would now be a legacy of comfort and care, not a catalyst for cruises and contempt. My money would save lives, not fund a life devoid of meaning. I do not know exactly how the news was delivered. I imagine a crisp, official-looking envelope arriving at the Flanagan residence. I imagine Todd's father, a man I had met only once but had sized up as a proud, image-conscious executive, opening it. I imagine him reading the scathing, legally binding account of his son's words, the cold, hard proof of his character. I imagine the subsequent conversation with his son, a conversation not of morality, but of finance. The dream of marrying into the great Mildred fortune was dead, and with it, I suspect, so was any real affection they may have had for my granddaughter. The fallout was not loud, but it was swift and total. Jessica called me one afternoon, her voice a thing I did not recognize, a frantic, sobbing, hysterical mess. "Nana, what did you do? Todd's parents, they're furious. Todd said you sent them some crazy letter. He's calling off the engagement." "I did nothing, Jessica," I said, my voice calm and even a frozen lake of tranquility. "I simply clarified the terms of my estate, based on a conversation I was unfortunate enough to overhear. It seems Mr. Todd's affection for you was contingent upon a future that no longer exists." She began to plead, to bargain, to apologize, but her apologies were for the consequences, not for the crime. She was not sorry for her silence, she was sorry she got caught. I listened for a moment to the sounds of her world collapsing, and then I said, "Goodbye, Jessica," and I gently hung up the phone. The will, of course, remains a private document until my passing, but the notarized letter to the Flanagans had the desired effect. The engagement was irrevocably broken. Todd, stripped of his golden ticket, showed his true colors and vanished from Jessica's life, leaving her with nothing but a mountain of debt from their lavish lifestyle and a reputation that was now in tatters. I have not seen or spoken to Jessica since that final phone call. I live now in the quiet solitude of my large home, a queen reigning over an empire of memories. The animal shelter, my new heir, sends me weekly updates, their gratitude a small, warm light in the gathering twilight of my life. My victory is a profoundly lonely one. There is no joy in it. I have protected my husband's legacy, and I have taught the hardest, most expensive lesson of my long career as an educator. On my desk, in a small, ornate box, sits a single, crisp $1 bill. It is the inheritance of the girl I loved more than life itself. And it is a constant, heartbreaking reminder that some family treasures, once squandered, can never be bought back at any price.